Your position is being eliminated in our restructuring. My name is Lucas Fallner. I was 51 when they let me go from Veltri Dynamics, a wholesale distributor in Kansas City, Missouri. 15 years I had managed their inventory forecasting. 15 years of accurate predictions, balanced warehouses, and millions saved because I knew what would sell and when. The HR rep sat across from me in a sterile conference room, hands folded over a manila folder. She avoided eye contact as she delivered the news. Behind her, through the glass wall, I could see the warehouse floor where my models had run like clockwork for more than a decade. "This is effective immediately," she added. "We have a generous severance package prepared." I nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't ask why the only department that never missed a target was being cut. She looked surprised by my calm. Maybe she expected me to yell or plead. Instead, I asked a single question. "Who's taking over forecasting?" "We'll be transitioning that responsibility to our new VP of Operations, Trevor Hamilton. He has extensive experience in supply chain optimization." Trevor Hamilton. I knew the name. Young guy, 35 maybe. MBA from a big-name school. He'd been making rounds at the company, questioning our old methods and praising revolutionary approaches to analytics. "I see," I said. She slid the papers toward me. The severance was fair, 3 months of salary and benefits. They wanted me gone quietly. I signed without reading the fine print. Walking to my office to pack, I passed Trevor's temporary workspace. He was buried in supply chain reports, mine. My reports. My models. My 15 years of forecasting that had made Veltri profitable through recessions and market swings. He looked up and gave me a nod. Polite. Professional. Like he wasn't dismantling everything I'd built. I packed a single box. My daughter's coffee mug. A photo of Rebecca, my late wife. The cactus that survived 8 years on my windowsill. The rest stayed company property. Spreadsheets. Code. Models I had built from nothing. 20 minutes later, I walked out with my box and final paycheck. James, the security guard, waved from his booth. He'd been there nearly as long as I had. "Take care of yourself, Lucas," he said. "I will." I'd started at Veltri right out of college, when they were just going national. Degree in supply chain, but I had always seen patterns others didn't. I worked under Harold Morse my first year. Old school. Gut instincts. Seasonal trends. It worked barely. We had too much of what didn't sell and not enough of what did. At night, I built spreadsheets. Tracked sales, weather, gas prices, competitor moves. Slowly, Harold began trusting my projections. When he retired 5 years later, I took over and implemented my system. Results were immediate. Inventory turnover rose 30% in a year. Dead stock dropped to under 2%. During the 2008 crash, competitors took huge losses. Veltri didn't. We saw it coming and adjusted. Rebecca was proud of what I built. She listened patiently to my ramblings about flu patterns predicting home goods demand or gas prices impacting regional sales. She called me her crystal ball husband. She died 4 years ago. Cancer. After the funeral, work became my anchor. Numbers don't leave. Don't lie. They're stable. Over time, I trained 3 junior analysts. All moved on to better roles. 2 still call now and then for advice. But things had shifted at Veltri. 8 months ago, we were bought out. The new owners brought in consultants who never worked in wholesale. They used words like synergy and streamline. Trevor Hamilton was one of them, promoted internally. During our first meeting, he questioned everything. "These models seem complex," he said, flipping through my slides. "Are we sure this granularity is necessary? Most systems are simpler and automated." I explained our complexity was precision. 17 variables let us predict market swings 3 months out. I showed the results. He smiled, took notes on his tablet. 2 weeks later, the restructuring was announced. My department gone. Efficiency, they said. I saw the signs. Ignored them. Just like I ignored Rebecca's early fatigue. Some patterns I saw. Others I missed. 6 months later, the call came. Thursday afternoon in March. I was working from my home office on a consulting gig for a small distributor when the phone rang. "Lucas, this is David Kellerman, the CEO of Veltri." In 15 years, he called me directly only 3 times, twice during crises my forecasts helped avoid, once to congratulate me on record-low inventory variance. Hello, Mr. Kellerman. Lucas, I need to ask you something, and I need honesty. Did you prepare forecasts for April through September before you left? I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the ceiling. Of course I had. Of course I had. I always worked 2 quarters ahead. It was standard practice, part of what made my predictions so reliable. Yes, sir. I prepared preliminary forecasts through October. Actually, they should still be in the share drive. That's what I was afraid of. There was a long pause. Lucas, we have a problem. A big problem. Trevor made some significant purchasing decisions that went against what I am now seeing were your recommendations. We are sitting on almost $4 million in unsellable inventory. $4 million. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not surprise exactly, more like the confirmation of something I had been trying not to think about. What kind of inventory? Outdoor furniture, garden supplies, seasonal sporting goods. Trevor anticipated a massive surge in demand based on what he called post-pandemic lifestyle trends. He tripled our normal orders. I didn't say anything immediately. I was thinking about my forecast models, the ones that had predicted a 15% decrease in outdoor furniture sales due to economic uncertainty and changing consumer spending patterns. The models that had recommended reducing seasonal inventory by 20%, not increasing it. Lucas, I need to ask you something else. Do you still have copies of those forecasts? I did. I had copies of everything on my personal laptop. 15 years of refined algorithms, trend analyses, and predictive models. I hadn't planned to use them. Honestly, I had tried to forget about Veltri dynamics completely. Yes, I have them. Would you be willing to send them to me? And Lucas, I need you to know that if these forecasts are as accurate as your previous work, there are going to be some serious consequences for the people who ignored them. I stared at my computer screen, where the small regional distributor's data was spread across multiple spreadsheets. Simple work. Straightforward analysis. Nothing like the complex system I had built at Veltri. I'll send them over this afternoon, I said. Thank you. And Lucas, I'm sorry about how things ended. The line went dead. I sat in my office for 20 minutes, not moving, just thinking. Then I opened my laptop and began pulling together the files. I spent 3 hours that afternoon assembling the forecast package. Not just the basic predictions, but the full analytical framework I had developed. Weather correlation data, economic indicator matrices, regional demographic models, and competitor analysis algorithms. Everything Trevor Hamilton would have needed to make informed purchasing decisions. The email I sent to David Kellerman was simple and professional. Mr. Kellerman, attached are the forecasting models and trend analyses for April through October. These were completed in February, 2 weeks before my departure. The recommendations included a 20% reduction in seasonal outdoor inventory due to projected economic headwinds and shifting consumer spending patterns. Please let me know if you need any clarification on the methodology. Best regards, Lucas Fallner. I hit send at 4:17 p.m. and went to make coffee. My phone rang at 6:22 p.m. Lucas, I've been going through your forecast for the past 2 hours. David's voice was tight. Your models predicted almost exactly what happened, down to specific product categories and regional variations. How did Trevor miss this? Did he have access to the files? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I spoke with information technology. They confirmed that your forecasting directory was never removed from the shared drive. Everything was still there when Trevor took over. I set down my coffee cup. So he had access to the models, but chose not to use them. Worse than that, I found emails where Trevor specifically dismissed your approach as overly conservative and not aligned with current market opportunities. He convinced the purchasing team that your methods were outdated. There was a long pause. I could hear papers shuffling in the background. Lucas, I'm looking at a spreadsheet Trevor prepared in April. He projected a 40% increase in outdoor furniture sales based on what he called social media trend analysis and lifestyle optimization data. Did you ever use social media metrics in your forecasting? I tested them, I said. Social media trends are too volatile and demographic specific to be reliable predictors of wholesale distribution demand. Consumer sentiment on social platforms doesn't translate directly to purchasing behavior at the retail level. That's exactly what your notes say in the methodology section. Trevor apparently didn't read that far. I was quiet for a moment, processing what David was telling me. Trevor hadn't just ignored my forecasts. He had actively argued against them and convinced others to follow his alternative approach. Mr. Kellerman, may I ask what the current situation looks like? We have warehouses in 3 states filled with outdoor furniture that should have been sold 2 months ago. Garden supplies that are now out of season. Sporting goods for activities that apparently nobody is participating in anymore. Trevor is scrambling to find discount outlets, but we're looking at massive losses. What about Trevor? Trevor is still insisting that his projections were sound and that the market simply shifted unexpectedly. He's blaming external factors and requesting additional time to implement what he calls corrective strategies. I almost smiled. Trevor was doubling down instead of acknowledging the mistake. It was exactly the kind of behavior I had seen from other consultants who prioritized being right over being accurate. Lucas, I need to ask you something else. Would you be willing to come in and present your forecasting methodology to the board? They need to understand how we got into this situation and how we can prevent it from happening again. The board meeting. I had presented to the board once before during a quarterly review 3 years ago. They had been impressed but distant, treating forecasting as a necessary but unexciting operational function. Monday morning, 9 a.m. I know it's short notice, but we're dealing with investor questions and the board wants answers immediately. I looked around my small home office. The regional distributor project could wait. This was something different. This wasn't just about vindication or proving I had been right. This was about showing everyone exactly what happened when experience and expertise were dismissed in favor of trendy theories and untested assumptions. I'll be there, I said. Thank you. And Lucas, bring everything. All your models, all your data, all your documentation. The board needs to see the full scope of what we lost when we let you go. Board presentation prep had begun, but I also started digging deeper into what had gone wrong at Veltri after I left. I still had contacts inside, and a few quiet calls revealed details David Kellerman hadn't shared. My former assistant Jennifer Walsh agreed to meet me for coffee Saturday morning. She'd worked with me for 3 years before transferring to accounting when my role was dissolved. Lucas, I tried to warn them, she said, adding sugar to her coffee. When Trevor began placing those massive purchase orders, I pulled your old forecasts and showed them to my supervisor. You'd predicted the opposite trend. What happened? Trevor found out I was questioning his strategy. HR called me in for undermining departmental initiatives and failing to support new leadership. I was nearly written up. Jennifer leaned in, voice lower. That's not the worst of it. Trevor didn't just ignore your forecasts. He told people not to use them, called your models outdated, and said anyone caught referencing them would be reassigned. This was new. Trevor hadn't just dismissed my work. He actively suppressed it. Who else knew? Most of purchasing. Some warehouse managers. They raised concerns when the outdoor furniture shipments started flooding in. Tony Vega from Phoenix even called me. His warehouse was running out of room. Tony Vega. I remembered him. Smart manager, sharp on regional demand. If Tony was concerned, the problem was real. Did anyone escalate? Trevor shut it all down. Canceled feedback meetings. Said the new system didn't need input from ops. Questioning his projections meant you lacked confidence in leadership. I sat back. Trevor hadn't just made a bad call. He'd made it impossible to challenge. Jennifer looked around, pulled out her phone. Lucas, I probably shouldn't show you this, but I took screenshots before your files were deleted from the shared drive. They deleted my files? Last month, Trevor said they were cluttering the system, but I saved the important ones. She showed me emails from April and May. Subject lines like inventory concerns, Phoenix, and revised forecasting questions. Operational concerns, legitimate questions, each met with Trevor's bureaucratic, dismissive replies. One from Tony stood out. Outdoor furniture is at 340% of normal levels. History suggests we reduce orders, not increase. Request clarification. Trevor's reply. Current projections use advanced analytics not previously available. Operational concerns should follow proper channels. Jennifer, do you think Kellerman saw any of this? Doubt it. Trevor handled all inventory reporting to the execs. Kellerman got summaries, not the real feedback. I finished my coffee thinking about Monday's board meeting. This wasn't just about forecasting. It was a system-wide failure. Expertise ignored, dissent punished. Would you give these emails to Kellerman? She nodded. Already printed them. I was waiting for someone to ask the right questions. I thanked her and left. Monday's presentation wasn't about proving I was right. It was about accountability. Sunday evening, I got a call from Tony Vega in Phoenix. Lucas, I heard you're presenting to the board. We've been documenting everything since March. Photos, shipping records, storage issues. How'd you hear about the meeting? Word gets around when $4 million of goods are sitting unsold. Look, we all knew your forecasts were solid. We raised concerns. Trevor blocked everyone. Tony explained how warehouse managers had kept informal records, tracking discrepancies between forecasts and reality. They had images of overflowing facilities and documentation of retailer complaints. The real issue isn't just excess inventory, Tony said. While Trevor was doubling down on outdoor furniture, he ignored your advice on electronics and home improvement. Now we're short on what customers actually want. So you got both surplus and shortages. Exactly. Worst case scenario. Too much of what's not selling, not enough of what is. We've got retail clients threatening to leave. I took notes. The damage was deeper than Kellerman had known. It wasn't just financial. It was reputational. Tony, would you and the others present this to the board? We already prepared a joint report. Photos, data, everything. We were just waiting for someone to care. After the call, I spent 2 hours reorganizing my deck. This was no longer just about forecasting. It was about the communication breakdown that let bad decisions go unchallenged. I broke the board presentation into 3 sections. First, the forecasting methodology I had built over 15 years, highlighting accurate predictions and crisis avoidance. Second, a side-by-side comparison of my February forecasts and Trevor's purchasing, with documentation of the warnings that followed, had been ignored. Third, the operational proof from warehouse managers, customer complaints, and the broader consequences for Velteri's client trust and market stance. Monday morning came cold and gray. I put on my best suit, the one I had worn to Rebecca's funeral, and headed to Velteri Dynamics headquarters for the first time in half a year. The building hadn't changed, but it felt different. David Kellerman was waiting in the lobby to greet me in person, something he'd never done in my 15 years with the company. Lucas, before we head up, I want to let you know Trevor will be in the meeting, he said. He asked to present his side regarding the inventory decisions. That's fine, I replied. The board should hear everything, and the warehouse managers will join us remotely, David added. Tony Vega insisted they present their own operational findings. We took the elevator to the executive floor. Through the glass boardroom walls, I saw 8 people seated, 7 board members and Trevor Hamilton, looking polished and composed. David opened the door, and I stepped in carrying my laptop, a folder of reports, and over a decade of insight that was about to be put to the test. Good morning, I said. Thank you for allowing me to speak on the inventory issue. Trevor looked up and offered a polite smile, as if he hadn't cost the company millions by ignoring the system I built. I connected my laptop to the projector. Charts and projections filled the screen. In February, before my exit, I completed forecasts through October. I began. They predicted a 15% drop in outdoor furniture demand, a 25% dip in seasonal sports gear, and a 30% increase in electronics and home improvement sales. Next slide, Trevor's purchase records versus my recommendations. The contrast was glaring. Instead of pulling back, Velteri had tripled outdoor furniture orders and completely skipped electronics. Predictably, it backfired. Trevor shifted slightly. Those forecasts used outdated models that didn't reflect emerging consumer behavior. I nodded, then clicked to show Tony Vega's warehouse photos. Pallets of unsold furniture filled storage yards. Shipping containers still sealed. These were taken just last week in Phoenix, Denver, and Memphis, I said, for $1 million of inventory that should never have been ordered. Board member Elizabeth Morrison leaned forward. Trevor, did you review these projections before proceeding? I did, he replied. But I felt they were too conservative and didn't match the opportunities we saw. I moved to the final slide. Customer losses, canceled contracts, and supplier complaints due to missing inventory in categories where demand had surged. The warehouse teams have documented all of this, I said. Tony Vega is ready to elaborate. David started the call. Tony's voice filled the room. For the next 10 minutes, he and 3 other managers walked through photos, logs, and incident reports, exposing a total operational breakdown. When they finished, silence. Chairman Walter Jenkins looked at Trevor. Mr. Hamilton, do you have a response? Trevor straightened his tie. These are temporary fluctuations. My strategy was built on advanced models that legacy methods can't match. I reopened my laptop. They're not fluctuations. These patterns have repeated in 2008, 2015, and again in 2019. When uncertainty rises, outdoor furniture spending drops. DIY spending rises. Elizabeth turned to me. Lucas, what would the financial picture have looked like if your forecasts had been followed? Based on the last 6 months of sales, I answered, Velturi would have made $1.20 to $2 million more, without the $4 million surplus. Trevor tried to interject, but Jenkins raised a hand. That's enough. Trevor, step out. We need a private discussion. Trevor collected his notes and exited. The board voted unanimously. Trevor was fired. David Kellerman was asked to pursue legal options for recovering damages due to negligence and policy violations. Lucas, Chairman Jenkins said, we'd like you to take Trevor's position, VP of Operations. Full control of forecasting and inventory. I looked around at faces that had once been distant, now fully engaged. I'm honored, I said, but I'll need time to consider. Of course, take all the time you need. Afterward, David walked me to the parking lot. Lucas, letting you go, it was the worst decision we made in 20 years. I nodded, got in my truck, and drove through Kansas City traffic, weighing what came next. VP, full authority. The chance to rebuild what I had once created, only better. 2 weeks later, I accepted. My first act, reinstate my full forecasting model. The second, require operational input before major purchases. No more silencing expertise. Jennifer Walsh became my assistant manager. Tony Vega was promoted to director of warehouse operations. Together, we rebuilt the systems Trevor had torn down. We sold off the extra inventory at a 60% loss. Trevor? He landed at a consulting firm in Chicago, advising others on supply chain efficiency. I saved one thing from it all. An email from the day David called me back. Not as a trophy, but a reminder. Real expertise can't be deleted. And when ignored, the numbers always tell the truth.